At this time, we'll call to order the regular city council meeting for May 13th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lisa, let the roll call show everyone is present. And we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from April 22nd, 2019.
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the approval of the bills this evening.
I'll move the bills.
I have a couple, actually.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
And I had spoken with Mr. Zelenik about some of the stuff is simply a matter of there's a number of multi-postings for like Safe Built, and one has a month on it, the other one doesn't make any reference to when it was. So I was hoping that we could end up putting a tag on everything so it's date stamped. It seemed like I had one that was kind of lingering. I think that's it. That's all I had, thanks. Oh, no, it was the Allman software. Yeah, so Paul knows about that one as well, so
Mr. Mayor, that was for GIS software.
it is, okay. I was wondering for not having it be our regular provider. Thank you.
I got one.
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Paul, Mr. Zelenik, on page number 1 of the bills where it says contribution perpetual care fund, and then it says transfer in from cemetery fund, that's regarding what we discussed earlier about the survey, I believe, isn't it? The survey for the expansion of the
Which
cemetery?
page, are you looking at page 1 of 1, or are you looking at the sec?
Front page, right on the front page. 42,851.
That's not on the bills, that's on the financial report.
Oh. Well, it just says transfer, but to clear it up, that's indicating what was, how we did it to,
Carol, I give, you guys all get a financial report, which is what you're looking at
Yeah.
right now. Then you also get a payroll report from my office. It's a separate document. And then you get the bills the checks that we've written, and then you also get a report that shows the bills that you need to approve.
yeah.
So what you're looking at is actually the financial report. So the contribution came from perpetual care into general fund, and that is to pay for the wages for the DPW and our cemetery volunteers to do the work as groundskeeping at the cemetery. That's what that's for.
Okay, I thought it was for the survey.
Engineering for the survey?
Survey
No,
for the
that'll be charged, I believe that's next.
That'll be as of July 1 of next year.
Next year, and then that will be charged directly to the perpetual care fund. It won't be a transfer into general fund.
Oh, okay, all right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
This is on the check register, and it's dated 4/25/219, page 3 of 5. It does have a V after it, so it looks like the check was voided. I don't know if it was voided because of the amount or because who it was issued to. And it was issued to Lloyd Collins in April for officers' cleaning allowance.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we got issued because,
I'm going to have a question.
Just need to know why it was voided.
because those checks get put in ahead of time. We put them in a year ahead of time. And so he retired, but I didn't go in and uncheck his little box. So once
Okay.
we wrote the checks, we made a mistake. We voided it.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
I'll second the bills as amended, or just the bills in general.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I abstain because I have a conflict with respect to payment to Kenneth Mahalik.
That's not a viable argument.
Well, that's not your decision to make. I hold the conflict, not you.
I know, but it has to be approved by the full body to be able, for you to be able to sign off on that.
Okay, well, I have a conflict of interest. It's my husband.
I'd like to actually ask Tim, do you see any real reason why there's a conflict of interest that her husband ended up getting reimbursed by the cultural arts purchases?
Goes into my bank account.
Yeah, I mean, this, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Tim?
So there is a procedure to identify and address conflicts through the charter. I forget the section off the top of my head. But this is exactly what a financial conflict of interest is. She's sitting as a council member voting on one of the many checks that are there that she is abstaining is the one that goes to her husband as a member of the Cultural Arts Commission. That is
Be
exactly
reimbursed
what
for stuff that was
that is
purchased for them?
exactly what a conflict
That's
of
what it is.
financial
Oh, that's
conflict
just-
of interest is.
Ridiculous. Okay.
All right, well, we'll move on to the attorney bills this evening.
I'll move the attorney bills.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Question.
Councilmember Richards?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim, I have a question directed towards you. I have on the very last page, page 13 in the back. Okay, I'm not complaining about the money, but where it says 329 correspondence to the telephone conference with planner, blah, 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 and number 2, correspondence with El Cavalieri regarding in status and blah, blah, okay? Sir, I consider this a hot potato issue item that's going to come back in the future, and I would request that we have confidential attorney-client privilege of what the conversation happened in that matter, okay? I anticipate more than one legal problem coming up down in the future with this whole thing. So that's my question to you. The money's fine, I just want to know if we can get an attorney-client privilege letter regarding that. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Tim?
So I'll confer with the city manager and probably contact Councilmember Richards directly to make sure that we're addressing any concerns that specific that he may have, and we'll provide you with an update on that particular matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have anything? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to approval of the agenda this evening.
I move the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Approval of this evening's consent agenda.
Consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, council, constituents. My name is Linda Hyaduck, and I am the district director for Senator Jim Runstead. My purpose in coming here tonight is to introduce myself to all of you, to let you know how proud we are to represent the city of South Lyon, how eager we are to help not only the council, the city, and our constituents, and to just give you a little background on Jim. Jim has been both a county commissioner and a state representative before becoming a senator in January. He is he's the chair of the Finance Committee. He's on the Judiciary Committee, on the Education, Families, and Seniors Committee, and on Veterans Appropriations. We have a website we'd like to share with everyone, and that would be provide a link not only to information about what's going on in the state of Michigan in government, but also directly to our office. That website is www.senatorjimrunstead.com, and our phone number is 517-373-1758. we'd like to invite the entire community to coffee hours. We will be meeting with constituents the fourth Friday of every month. And so this month it would be May 24th, and that's at noon at the South Lyon Hotel every month. And we urge you to come and get to know Jim and give us your feelings about things and just hear about what's happening in Lansing firsthand. Thank you very much for your time, and hope to meet all of you personally at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will close public comment. And we'll invite Mr. Donahue down to discuss the downtown.
Okay, hello, everybody. In addition to Paul's report for last week's activity, there are 2 items I put on your desks, a little more detail. This citywide business and property owner survey, there's a draft. Just wanted you to know we made good on providing it within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So it's a draft. I think we could cut some of it. Again, there's information at the beginning where that is all confidential. But the information, the questions are based upon others used in other county downtowns, other county economic development offices, and anywhere else we could find the information. So that's kind of the starting point, and Paul and I will trim and listen to your comments too. So you can send those to me or just drop them off. Great. Any questions on that?
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
So, Paul, I sent you that email where I had some concerns about this survey at the get-go. Have you shared those with Bob?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so they obviously aren't reflected in this survey, so that's why I'm asking.
We did talk about some of the things, and matter of fact, we talked about it again today about why we might want to have some things, why we may not want to have some of these things. But we want to obviously get all your opinions on the whole thing. You had expressed some items to me, and we obviously wanted to be able to talk with the rest of the council members as well.
Okay, so, I mean, here's, just in a nutshell for the benefit of the rest of the individuals on council, here's my concern with the way this is structured at this present time. Basically, you're asking for a lot of information, what I would call demographic-type information for each of the businesses. And while you say it's anonymous, the minute they include some of this information, they're going to be very easy to identify which business this is within the 3.7 square miles.
They don't
So
have to.
the anonymous part goes out the window. What my suggestion is if you want that information, and I think it's very worthwhile to have that type of information so that you understand exactly the breadth and depth of businesses that we have here in the city. The other part of this is looking for feedback from the businesses on what they feel is going well and what they feel could be improved. That's the part that I think would really be necessary to be anonymous. Likewise, what I suggested is that information should come back to the city manager. There's nothing on here that says who you're supposed to return this to begin with, the way it is right now.
It's because that is just a draft of the questions.
And again,
That's
I
not the
understand that, Bob.
final.
I'm looking at just conveying some of my comments so that, these
It's
get
not a
factored
final
in.
format at all.
Okay. So again, these are the types of things that I would see the completed survey coming back to the city manager and allowing him to separate the anonymous comments so that they can be fed back. So if there are issues, the businesses feel comfortable in raising them so that we can in turn address them. And the other information as far as identifying the makeup of all the businesses within the city, absolutely nothing, confrontational, et cetera, in that information. Well worthwhile to have a complete directory of the cross-function of businesses that we have. But again, I think it's worthwhile separating the two.
Again, if you read the intro and based upon all the others that I researched, the total intent is that it's all anonymous and it's all confidential, and I understand. And so that is in no way the final format.
Okay. So this isn't going to go out, you'll have something that'll be revised and we'll get other ones.
No, and it also has to be marketed in a well-designed graphic format. So that is
I would
just
hope we'd get to see
first
the rough
blush.
draft before we spend the money, producing it.
You will be informed every step of the way before anything's final.
Okay.
That's why, as Paul said, we want all of your input.
Thank you.
Because I may professionally disagree with something you say, but we will have that discussion with the whole council, and I'll take direction from the whole council through Paul. Be more than happy to this is just a starting point.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Parisian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to echo the same concerns as Steve Kennedy. It's just, for me, I want to see more hard-hitting questions pertaining to what can the city do to benefit your business? What are the pros and cons that you see from the city? What's the impact that you think our downtown is making, if any at all? What are the things that we can do as a downtown to become better? Communication, things of that nature. So I think this is a great start. And again, it's just a draft. And I do commend you for getting this, the turnaround was so fast. So thank you for working hard on this. I'll send questions too, but my concerns are aligned with Councilmember Kennedy as well.
Sure, we're open.
Yes,
Great.
thank you. Thank you for being open.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
I have two comments. The first one is on the survey. Thank you. I think you did a good job. I think, though, that you don't want to overburden the businesses with the survey. These are business owners that are monitoring their business. Some of them may have competitive tactics that they use in terms of their strategy that they may not be willing to disclose in terms of who they advertise with, how they advertise. I think they probably don't want to necessarily disclose a competitive edge. And I think if you make it too long and drawn out that you're going to lose their attention. But I think you've done a great start, and for the most part, it's a good deal. The other thing I do want to mention is we participate in TIF. We have a TIF authority, correct, or no?
Our DDA utilizes TIF through the DDA Act. It's
Okay.
an overlay of the DDA.
Are we aware, Tim, of the new reporting requirements? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a schedule of when you're going to have your public discussions?
We
Because
don't have that scheduled, but our report, our first report is due after the first of the year. We supplied the documents. Our step one, we followed step one,
okay.
and our first report is due, and so we would have the actual meeting should be probably this fall, early fall.
Well, that's what
Public input.
that's what I thought until I read the timeline. The timeline requires the submission of information posting on the website, deadline for providing copies based on 180 days after the city's fiscal year. So that would put you to the end of December. But the informational meetings, semi-annual, begin on January 1st. So the time period begins clicking, and you have to have two. That begins January 1st, not at the end of the fiscal year.
But it all triggers after, I mean, we'll work out the dates. We'll do whatever. It's fairly simple. We're trying to make sure that, Tim can advise us to all those fine points, but we definitely will hold the public input meetings. There's no problem at all.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, Bob had just mentioned that we already followed step one. We had information that needed to be supplied to the state Treasury Department by April 1st of this year. We've already met that particular date, and then it's the next 6 months start after the start of the fiscal 2019-20 budget year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
Well, this is the first time I've seen this document. It's at its infancy. I think that any business that's likely to end up getting one of these will decide the questions that they want to forward information, and they simply won't answer the ones that cause them any pause. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. I think there's going to be a lot of benefit to have whatever feedback we can get from businesses in town.
Okay, a couple other items.
Yep.
Quick. The other item I wanted you to be aware of, and it's been in the report the last 2 or 3 weeks, is we are working on a request from a property owner. We want to be ready, and we want to be actually way in advance of the formal request for a commercial tax abatement. We want to follow up to where we were 2 years ago. I know there are 4 new council members since the last time council took up commercial tax abatement. But 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we were considering it as an option for the hotel. And we also had a work session, and we were considering it for another development that's within the master plan. So we then kind of dropped it because both projects didn't proceed. We now have an active request coming forward, and so we have enough time to revisit, get council input, and to kind of pick up where we were 2 years ago, and at council's discretion, take it to wherever you think we should take it with recommendations from Paul and I, but with information from the city attorney. So we're still assembling information, and we hope to bring it to you soon.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Okay, I think you're a little off on the timeline. Everybody that is on this council was involved in that discussion of the tax abatement when it dealt with the property over on Reese Street that was being contemplated for.
But that was industrial.
I
That is a whole separate law.
But again, we talked about having the tax abatement, having the criteria established, and that is subject has been brought up on numerous occasions to the city attorney. So if the city attorney has not reacted to that, it's not for lack of input from the council. We brought it up. We need to do something about it. We need to take it off the back burner so that we're not working out of the hole when the subject comes up. Hopefully, we'll do it.
If I may. The criteria will be similar, but quite a bit different for commercial tax abatement.
That's
The
fine.
process will be
As
different.
long as, again, the thing is to have it clearly established, whether it's industrial, whether it's commercial,
Sure.
okay, and have it in place ahead of time. We've had this discussion.
Oh, no question. That's why we're being upfront.
Okay.
That's
And
why
that's-
we are being proactive to get this before you, before we even intake an application.
Proactive would have been, it would have been already brought to the forefront as opposed to, where you have somebody in the wings going to be bringing this to us now. So hopefully we bring it forward soon and we get it established so that it doesn't appear that it's purely being subjective evaluation.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
I understand your point, but at the same time, there had been absolutely no interest and no prospects that warranted our preemptively creating this environment. We're starting to see some activities that certainly have at least a whisper of having an interest in doing something like this. So now is the time for us to establish what the thresholds are that we would entertain the idea. So that's what he's doing.
And I agree with that, Councilman Gibble.
Yeah.
The other thing I have a concern about is that, when there's discussions to the effect that we're in the process of informally offering abatements when they're not even being requested by businesses. I have a real concern with that,
That's why we didn't do it.
okay? And that's why we need to have that criteria established ASAP.
Exactly.
Thanks.
That's our whole intent.
Good. I appreciate it, Bob.
We're getting very popular, so we need to be ready.
I think what's important is that as you see the information that you'll get within the next few weeks, we're looking at thresholds, and that's where the discussion dropped off 2 years ago.
Right.
It's not for every building. We're looking
Right.
at, just for an example, if you wanted to use the RCA building, it's no secret, the investment in the RCA building, which is 135 East Lake, will be somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million. So if the threshold for commercial, which is different than the industrial, is a minimum of $500,000, let's say. So a project conceivably for $500,000 to $1 million, even though the law says you can give out 12 years, no communities do that. So they may only get 1 or 2 years maximum. I mean, maybe that's it. That's how, it's going to be very conservatively recommended. And any scale that would be suggested will be conservative. No one's ever going to recommend. You'll never see this office, I won't speak for anybody else, ever recommend a 12-year. Because in my opinion, knowing how it works in Michigan or throughout the country, even at a $10 million project, in my opinion, and based upon other communities, the most they may get is 5 or 6 years, even though the law says 12. So we're going to be very conservative and mindful of the city's budget.
Great.
And the law has dealt with scales that go across huge, complexes. So, we don't have that environment, so.
True.
Anything else tonight, Bob?
That's all I have.
All right. Anyone with anything else for Mr. Donahue? Okay.
Welcome. All
Thanks.
good questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.
At this point, we'll move on to new business this evening. Assessing contract with Oakland County.
Mr. Mayor, the city has contracted with Oakland County for assessing services for many years. The current contract is up as of June 30th, 2019. They presented us with a new contract for 3 years with a 1% per parcel increase for each of the next 3 years. We've included this cost in the 2019-20 budget. The contract will charge $6 per unit at Colonial Acres and $14.44 per parcel for real property and $11.82 for personal property. We currently have 3,873 real properties and 340 personal properties. I've attached information regarding the contract. Possible courses of action tonight is approve or not approve the proposed 3-year contract with Oakland County for assessing surfaces. It is my recommendation to approve the 3-year contract with Oakland County. We have representatives from Oakland County Equalization Department here to answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening. My name is Dave Heber. I'm the manager of Oakland County Equalization. Michelle Menard is the employee representative that handles South Lyon for us. In Oakland County, there's 52 taxing jurisdictions. We have intergovernmental agreements with 32 of the 52, and this is just a standard assessing contract renewal for 3 years. I'll take any questions you may have.
Councilmember Parisian?
Do you have an IGA with the city of Detroit?
What's that?
Do you have an IGA with the city of Detroit?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kibble?
I actually have one for Tim. It isn't uncommon for us to have some narrative concerns about contracts with Oakland County. Do you see anything goofy in here?
I didn't see this until the packet was put together.
Oh, okay.
But it's my understanding that this is very similar to the contract that you currently have. It does have a termination provision in it, and there was another, also the indemnity language was acceptable.
Okay. I mean, they're never a hurdle that we haven't been able to bridge, but nonetheless, I'd like to know up front. I mean, we can't do this in-house anywhere near to the expertise that they provide or the cost, so I think that it's a given we should do this.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's important here is that the county has a very good reputation for assessing and equalization issues. I know I've called them in the past on matters unrelated to the city, and your department has been absolutely outstanding. Clearly, a city like South Lyon, we do not have the expertise, we do not have the professionalism in-house, and given that we are in an area where we have flatline taxes here in the city in terms of we don't have any new revenues coming in, the importance and the role that you play in terms of our tax rolls is becoming more and more significant. So I just want to get that out there.
Well, thanks. And the feeling's mutual. Working with Paul and Lisa and Tim is one of it's an easy contract for us to manage with those individuals.
Yeah, they're good employees, they're good people, they know their job too, but you have the access to the data, to the charts, to the trends, to the things that we do not have, so.
Thank you.
Well,
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the 3-year contract with Oakland County for the assessing services.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Kennedy, supported by Councilmember Richards, to approve the 3-year contract with Oakland County for assessing services. Anyone have anything to add to that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here tonight, guys.
Thank you.
We're kind of on the next one, too.
Okay, sorry.
Glad to be here just in case you have any questions, perhaps, that they can better answer.
New business number 2, resolution to waive penalties for non-filing property tax affidavits under MCL 211.27B.
Mr. Mayor, when there's a change in the ownership of property, a property tax affidavit must be filed with the jurisdiction where the property is located, per law. Penalties may be applied if the property transfer affidavit isn't filed within 45 days of the date of sale. In the past, the city has chosen not to collect penalties for late filing. MCL 211.27B5 provides the local governing body may waive by resolution the penalty levied under MCL 211.27. Materials attached, a resolution to waive the penalties of non-filing for property transfer affidavits. The possible course of action is to approve or not approve the resolution to waive the penalties. It is my recommendation to approve the resolution waiving the fees. The county's here to answer any questions, perhaps of what they handle, how they do things in other jurisdictions.
Councilmember Kibble?
Well, I do have that question. In the event that someone doesn't understand that they had that obligation and they don't follow up on it, just the sale of the property, doesn't that sort of trigger?
Yeah, my comments, well, obviously, Oakland County's not going to take a position on what you do with relative to this, to levying this penalty or not. I can just share with you what we see from taxpayers. We generally see in our communities, taxpayers file those when they know they're supposed to file those. What happens is they're not aware that they have to file it, so then they don't file it. They're not real estate experts, and then maybe they're doing a transfer of ownership without maybe a good realtor, or maybe without a realtor at all, and they don't file it. And then they hit this penalty that they would gladly file it, but the penalty still sits there. Some communities do charge it, but it's fewer that charge it or that assess the penalty than will waive it. So, but again, Oakland County's not taking a position on what you do. That's completely up to you.
Well, the only downside that I'm seeing is if the city doesn't realize the pop-up value of whatever that transfer is.
We will still have that information from the recorded deed. So the deed will get filed at the clerk's office. We'll be made aware of it as your assessor.
Yeah.
But it's just it's the transfer affidavit that they're required to file that a lot of taxpayers don't know that they have to file.
Okay. So, yeah.
It's redundant.
Right, exactly. This is boilerplate stuff. Thank you.
Councilmember Parisian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question in regards to other communities and what they're doing. Is it your experience with other communities in Oakland County that they are collecting this tax?
No, most of them do not.
But it's your recommendation, City Manager Zelenak, that we should?
No, that we shouldn't. We waive the fees.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
well,
waiver
in that
of
case,
the
waive it.
resolution. Yeah.
Councilmember Walton?
Thank you. I'm having a hard time with this one myself. I feel like, why are we penalizing somebody for something they don't know?
If you vote for this resolution, you won't be.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
I'm going to make the motion then. I'd like to make the motion that we waive the fees for non-filing of property tax affidavits under MCL 211.2070.
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Walton, supported by Councilmember Kurtzwell, to approve the resolution of waiving fees for non-filing of property tax affidavits under MCL 211.270B. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 3 this evening, Consolidated Municipal Ambulance Service Agreement.
Evening.
Chief Vogel, how are you?
How do you
Good.
do?
Quick history. When I came here 16 months ago, I was told that we bill HVA every June 30th for some utilities. I figured out the invoice, and I was surprised to see that they paid $400 a year, $450-ish, for a total of $37 a month. And what they're paying for is 10% of the water, 10% of the gas, and they don't pay anything of the electric. If you understand how my building is designed, I have the main fire station. I have a separate base that holds an HVA ambulance, and then a second ambulance. If they don't put it, we put one of our chief cars in there. And then they have living quarters. So I found out that they pay their own water bill for their living quarters. But we share a water bill for where their ambulance is parked. So in other words, when they wash their ambulance, that's a water bill that I pay. So they currently pay 10% of that. We then I get 3 consumers' energy bills. One's for the generator, one's for my main building, and then one's for the HVA quarters and the bay that we share. The bill roughly for like January was $800 just in gas. So I realized that this contract had an automatic renewal unless we terminate. So I spoke with Andy Savage, who's from HVA. He's the vice president of the Eastern HVA. And I told Tim, I said, we need to think about maybe changing this. $450 a year seemed a little low. My utility bill alone is probably like $10,000. So Tim terminated the contract. What gets a little tricky is that this has Lyon Township in it. so we each have our own little part of this. So we ended up changing one section, and then we updated another section. If you fumble through it, you'll see where I changed some wording in the appendix. B reflects that we're going to still stay with the 10% of water. I'm comfortable with that. And then 50% of the consumer's energy for their building, living quarters, and then the bay that we share. And then 25% of the DTE for the building. And then appendix, the next appendix just shows a basic cost that HVA charges our citizens. It was never my intention to consider another ambulance service. It was just for these utilities. And I believe that this is a fair number for the city. I did a projection. I took last year's bill under the new terms just to see what it would come out at, and it was about $2,800 or $233 a month. Any questions for Andy or I? Yes?
No, but it's certainly not, doesn't seem punitive. I mean.
No.
Yeah,
I know HVA had a little pushback at first. It's a big jump, but I think Andy understands that it's still pretty good deal. We still get, what I like about having HVA in my building is it's good for the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
We really get good response with the firefighters and with the ambulance in the city, which they're there most of the time. They do get pulled to Plymouth, they do get pulled to Northville or Whitmore Lake or Green Oak, but I'm very happy that they're there, and I would never want them to leave, but I felt $400 is just, I could use a little help on the utility bill.
This is much more equitable. Right.
Councilmember Richards, you had something?
Yeah, Chief Vogel, this is subjective. In your opinion, if we ever need more ambulance facilities or facility for storage materials or whatever, in your opinion, you're familiar with 318 Lake Street, okay? The old library building. Could that be utilized, in your opinion, for any capacity for ambulance expansion services?
I doubt it. For one, I've never been in there.
Oh, I thought you had.
No, I'm sorry. I've been in the McMunn and I've been in McCaddy Park House, but I've never been in that building yet.
Oh.
Last time I asked, I'm not sure we even had a key yet, so I have not been in there.
Oh.
I'm not sure what you're asking me. Are you asking about moving the ambulance?
Well,
I don't know. There's not a garage. They need a pretty significant garage because it's a big van. You know what an ambulance looks like. Go ahead.
Well, half the building could be turned into a garage without adding a garage.
Well,
in my
like I
opinion.
said, I've never been in it, so I couldn't.
But, you know, I appreciate the, you know, you like having the right there near you.
Right.
But if we ever need more, okay?
Well, your big picture item,
Yeah,
at the rate we're growing,
yes.
I could envision us wanting that space for the living quarters. As of right now, we are so tight. I have nowhere for our firefighters to go. But with moving them to a Lake Street, I don't know. That would seem like a huge cost for them to take on, like they bought New Hudson, old fire station. But it's a huge undertaking, and it would be a big deal, I think. I mean,
Well, it's not very
I've never been in
far.
there. I was told that it's rough, but I can't say one way or the other. I've driven by.
I've been in it too. I don't consider it that rough. But it's close proximity to your fire hall, okay?
Correct.
And it seems though there could be a lot of utilization somewhere.
Top of the, just thinking of numbers, I would think it'd be at least $100,000 to make that place
Oh, yeah.
for an ambulance quarter, at least. Because you'd have to put in overhead doors, living quarters. I don't even know if there's a shower in there.
I don't know that part either.
But right now, they've got a pretty nice two bedrooms, a kitchen, showers, double bathrooms, male, female bathrooms. I think it would be a big undertaking, probably something they don't want to take on.
I'm just mentioning it, that's all.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Actually, Rob, your estimate's a little low. The building inspector went through there. It's 120 to 150 just to bring it back to meet code requirements.
Plus you got to add
let
overhead
alone whatever
doors.
renovations you want to do to it. So, yeah, it's a pretty healthy bill.
Yeah.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
This is just more of a legal question. If we approve this tonight and Lyon Township does not, or are you pretty sure
There's a
that
clause in here that Tim put in.
that's the clause that was added?
Well, it's a three-way agreement.
Yeah.
But it allows for municipalities to come in and out of the agreement. So we may need to look at it again if Lyon doesn't approve it, but they have seen this document. They will be addressing it at their first meeting in June. It's my understanding that they intend to move forward with this agreement. All of the three parties are currently in a very almost identical agreement. This has been updated a little bit as far as language, but I don't see that happening. At least I'm not aware of anything that would lead to that result. If it did, we could still proceed independently, one-on-one with HVA.
Because I read the language in here and I wasn't real sure, so I just wanted to get your opinion on that. I'm just looking at the range of options here.
I believe we would still, I think we could still proceed independently, directly with HVA on the
Okay.
same terms.
Okay.
In my long-term goals for the city, separating the contract in 4 years is probably one of them. I think they're going in a different direction in Lyon Township than we are. I can see them going full-time, and they might have different goals than us. So I could see that this could possibly be our last joint contract, just for the fact of that they are changing differently than we are, at least for our vision of what, the fire department response would be.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
And I think that was the other issue that I had, was the different paths, because you're absolutely right. I think there is some way they are going, and it is not consistent with where we are at. And I think it's budgetary issues. They just have a larger pot of gold to play with than maybe we do. And so that was the other thing I wanted to make sure, is that we weren't going to have stress put on this agreement, because there was maybe a difference in how the municipalities were operating, let's say, 18 months from now. 2020, there could be a change over in Lyon Township, so you could have a very different board of trustees over there that might have a different approach to doing this, and we'll be caught right there in that time period on this contract. So
I'm very comfortable with what we have with A&D and Lyon Township.
Okay,
or
perfect.
With HGA. But I do see some big changes coming, and I think I can envision this being probably the last
Okay.
one. It would be my recommendation.
thank you.
Councilmember Kibble?
I don't want to get into it right now, but I do want to talk to you about this further for the future of this contract, but I think that this solves our need, at least for the time being. So.
It does.
Yeah.
I think it helps. And then, talking to Andy and he's talking to his people, I think it came out to be a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
If you know the history, we used to own the ambulance in the city, right? And then HGA kind of took over and they supplied one ambulance paramedic, and then the city supplied one, and then they completely just kind of folded over. I think we wrote the agreement back then, so this is South Lyon driven, and the Lyon Township just kind of latched on to it.
When Dale lived here, it was easy.
Yeah, and he still does, and Dale's retired.
I mean, yeah.
So that was the joke.
Yeah.
He retired and we finally got rid of his deal, so.
Well, with that, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the consolidated municipal ambulance service agreement between HVA Inc. and the City of South Lyon and the Charter Township of Lyon, subject to minor changes approved by the city manager, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kibble, supported by Councilmember Parisian, to approve the consolidated municipal ambulance service agreement between Huron Valley Ambulance, Inc. and the City of South Lyon and the Charter Township of Lyon, subject to minor changes approved by the city manager, and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to the 2019-2020 budget. Paul, do you want to start us off?
Sure. All of you have received a copy of the 2019-20 budget. We've met one of the budget meetings to go over the budget. We had comments from council members. We had original meetings with council, as well as each council member submitted information to the city manager, which we compiled and gave to discussed with department heads, and came up with the proposed 2019-20 budget. Council has had the opportunity to go over the budget and make recommendations and have comments since our first budget meeting. And tonight, we're giving the council an opportunity to discuss some of the changes that we've made based upon items that came before city council in meetings, whether we had Hubbard and Clark in here talking about some improvements that we needed to have at some of the facilities, some of the comments that were made within the budget workshop, or some other additional items that came up through meetings with department heads. I provided each of you a narrative which outlines some of the budget changes based upon those conversations. Items included, within specific departments for administrations, changes were made based upon recommendations and based upon meetings with employees and discussing how we're moving an administrative position, assistant position from 22.5 hours to 29 hours per week. This budget does reflect a 3% increase for all non-union employees. The other employees' wages are based upon their specific contracts. We've added money for computers. We had an IT audit done with each one of the departments, determining our needs for the next so many years. We want to get on a replacement plan for our computers, as well as updating our servers and being compliant with all our software. This year, we also added within administration item relating to upgrades and hardware, relationship to computers and equipment for this auditorium. In the police department budget, we made changes based upon the IT recommendations, as well as fees to accommodate the increase in fees for fingerprint services that the police department does provide for the schools. In fire departments, we made changes based upon discussions at the council meeting where we moved payment for the chief and the assistant chief from fringe benefits by moving the assistant chief into a salary position, as well as increasing the salary for the fire chief. We also made some changes to the Parks and Rec budget based upon better reflect the cost of demolition of building at McCaddy Park, and also for changes in the estimates that were based upon the new wheelchair swing that were coming in at McCaddy Park as well. We made some minor changes to major streets and local streets based upon purchasing some minor pieces of equipment. One of the biggest changes that we had within this budget had to do with some of the recommendations that were made by our engineers in relationship to our water and sewer plants. Some of the capital outlays that we had for a sanitary sewer line running underneath the railroad track coming down Pontiac Trail, as well as some updates for that were made based upon an inspection that was done by DEQ just 2 weeks ago, and their recommendations of how we need to upgrade our plants. We also made some minor changes based upon DDA and the recommendations from the director and with their board regarding sponsorship collections, as well as the revenues for future events. And we also added an item for under land acquisition, which had to do with the sale for the property on West Lake Street, as well as for the demolition of that same building. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. There are several department heads here today to answer questions or provide additional feedback. The next time that this would be coming before you is the May 28th meeting, which would be up for the 2019 budget approval.
Thanks, Paul. Councilmember Kivel?
There was a bundle for administration on the desk, and it's same as I have in my binder. Do you know what that's about?
No, I don't. I don't know what you're provided. Oh, is that okay, that's the narrative. There was a minor change that was made because of the reflection in the cost per parcel for assessing services was not reflective in the original budget document. We made that change, so that change is reflected based upon the presentation that was done here by Equalization Department.
Okay, because it's just in the narrative, because all the numbers are the same.
Just in the narrative, that's
yeah,
right. The
okay.
dollar amounts were the same,
All right.
but it was just narrative in relationship to the cost per parcel for assessing services.
Okay.
We
And
discovered that
secondly,
today.
has there been any conversation with the schools as regards to the theater audio or video stuff.
Yes, we met with them probably 2 weeks ago to discuss it. They were still looking at moving forward with them. We told them we had to go out for bid on this, but if we are going to go and get this done this year, we need to allocate funds inside this year's
Yeah,
budget.
well, I'm glad to see that it's in here, so we're prepared in the event that they
Yeah,
entertain
and
the
it
idea.
may go up and may go down based upon whatever the bids come in.
Yeah.
We haven't, these bids, it's been discussed several times from my understanding, so it could
We can
vary,
amend
it could
if
change, but
necessary, yeah.
we need it in the budget, we need it, if in case we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Parisian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, I have a quick question in regards to the DDA's budget. The way that I read the narrative, I assumed that it meant for winter events just going on for Christmas time, probably Cool Yule. Previously, at the last meeting, we had discussed expanding the budget to include Ladies Night Out for both seasons.
Yes.
Is that also what you mean by
Well,
expanding for
the
events?
budget for Ladies Night Out, there is money in there for the May and November events under account 675. It does show revenues for that, as well as there is expenditures for that event as well, for
Okay.
both May and November.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah,
Councilmember Richards, go ahead.
Mr. Selnick, I've recently been made more acutely aware of our needs for the administration for our computers and servers to being updated. And I know you planned for it in next year's budget. Do you anticipate that if we don't do this in the next year to 2 years, the cost to the city would be much greater if we delay it at all? I'd like to know that.
Well, some of the items that are included with this have to do with software. We are going to be forced to do software updates by January of 2020. So if we were to update the software based upon the current piece or the current computers that we have at City Hall, that software, or at the police department, wherever it may be, that software goes with that computer. So if we decide to purchase another computer later on, we have to buy new software for that computer because that software will only go for that computer. So yes, we would potentially be paying for software twice because that software is only going to be licensed to that specific computer. That's one of the items. Server has to do with speed, some of the things that we do. We have to be compliant with police department, certain items that they have as well. Those items have to be updated on a regular basis. We get audited through the state of Michigan. We have to have some of those things done. We have not had a schedule. Just as we've talked about roads, water, infrastructure, parks, that specific plan, we started to discuss IT needs just before the end of the year, and that's when we brought in our IT consultants to start to look at what we have to do, because we have to start this very quickly. And if we don't, based upon some software changes, we're going to technically be paying for twice for the same piece of equipment or same piece of software.
Could I continue on here?
Certainly.
Okay. Our servers, how much more expensive are they, okay, compared to our needs with our computers and our regular software?
The servers are probably the most expensive item as it relates, because it's globally through a particular building. Like for this particular building, I think it's close to $20,000 for server and software and other hardware that's needed to encompass the dozen computers that are being operated on here at the city. So yes, as an item, that is probably the largest expense that we have.
Okay, and if ourselves or any government, municipality, or business doesn't get the right server matched up, with our own software, can the whole system break down and fail?
Yes, and it has to do with speed also, at how quickly we operate. There will be times that we do not have the speed, or we have to wait for things to come up, or we get kicked out, and therefore we have to have updates, and that stuff's on a regular basis. But getting the proper hardware in place that operates for all our computers to tap into, and I'm not a computer expert, but what I can say is that it does have an effect on all of the way all of us operate and all of us input data on a regular basis.
Okay, well, I hope we can get somebody that's knows exactly what we're supposed to be set up with in the software angle of things, okay?
Yes, and that's what we have our consultant. Our consultant is doing
We
that.
wiped out with $100,000 real fast, so it would seem to me.
Yes, and the IT consultant that we have has done an analysis of all our hardware, all our software, all our locations, water, sewer department, police, fire, city hall, everyone, to determine what we need. And that's why we need to start to get on this basis for making these adjustments, making these changes on a regular basis, and always having a review to make sure we are in compliant with everything, specifically things that are required through the state of Michigan.
That's all I have.
Councilmember Kennedy, go ahead.
Paul, back in October of 2018, you put the request out to the members of council to provide you with their bullet points, if you will, areas in which they felt that the city should focus its attention as far as items to be addressed. And I certainly commend you for doing that, okay? I've spent a lot of time talking to the department heads in the time that I've been on council, and, I put together the list that I thought were important items. Some of them were short-term. Some were long-term. There were 19 items on that list, 13 of which you've addressed in this budget, or we've already started addressing them, and I commend you for doing it. I'm extremely pleased that we've done it. These are maintenance issues that have been neglected and deferred and overlooked for a long period of time. And for someone who spent 40 years in industrial maintenance, there isn't one maintenance issue that gets cheaper or less complicated the longer you wait. So I appreciate the fact that you've taken the bull by the horns, and we're going to address some of these critical issues that need to be addressed with regard to our infrastructure. I am extremely pleased with what's on the books here. Thank you.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
I have some comments, but I do have some specific issues that I do want to address tonight. First one goes to the DDA, and I just want to let you know, Paul, that when I first ran for city council, there was not an economic development director, and that was one of the things that I fought pretty hard for, talked about. Not everybody agreed with that position, but I'm glad that we're where we're at today. But in my research for economic development directors, I found something very interesting. There were those communities that had fairly large TIF funds that were able to support the salary of an economic development director. And then there were those communities that were just beginning to work with an economic development director where the payroll, the expense, was on the administration side of the ledger and over time was moved to the DDA. So I'm just sort of bringing that up, that I wonder if at some point, and I'd like to hear your input on that, if at some point we can recover some of your salary through the DDA, just like maybe we do with an individual who works 20% with the water department. So what I'm doing, my perspective tonight is looking at the big picture, looking at revenue, and looking at expenditures. So I'm looking at opportunities to increase the revenue side a little bit on the administrative budget, because there has been an increase over there. Where can we get some additional contributions to salaries? So I went back to my notes about the DDA. So I'm just letting you know about that.
Yeah, we've had discussions regarding ways of increasing revenue within the DDA, and there's a lot of means at which to do that, not only just through sponsorships and things like that, but when economic development is done right within the DDA, you have additional investment that's brought into the DDA. And as DDAs work, the tax incremental financing, which is discussed. So if you had a property that was valued at $500,000 and now that property is valued at $1 million based upon new investment that's come into the DDA or to that particular building, that additional taxable value is brought or is multiplied times the tax times the millage rate for the district, and those revenues are only being brought into the DDA, not into the general fund. That is a means which our DDA will technically get more revenue in the future, and as we have some of these buildings redeveloped, those property values are increasing, rents will increasing, land values will increase, further development increase, which therefore brings additional TIF revenue into the city, specifically to the DDA, which will be able to afford us the opportunity to take some of that revenue and pay for a whether it's a part-time person, full-time person, whatever it may be, for a DDA director. And that's what usually happens within downtowns. It starts out where you bring in a part-time person, or the city says, okay, we will use our own administrative funds or general funds to hire a particular person. As your revenue starts to increase, that's something that we need to look at. And Bob, I know you've worked with other communities as well that have the same thing.
I think there's no question, and I've mentioned it earlier on in previous meetings, that as the DDA realizes the full potential of the master plan, that we absolutely should, in fact, whatever percentage of my time is devoted to the DDA, should be the percentage that the DDA pays when they can afford it. I think it's very forward of this council, very progressive, that you brought someone in, but I'm a proponent that DDA should pay their way when they can afford it, 100% in support of that.
We may be a decade off, but all I'm trying to do is to sow the seed, because one thing the city has not done well is plan. So if anything, is to begin letting the DDA know that at some point you may have to start sharing some of these costs. For example, I was surprised to learn that a DDA in Oakland County has their own separate attorney. They do not use the city's attorney. That it's been deemed a conflict of interest for the city attorney to do any work for the DDA. Now, I don't have an opinion on that. I haven't seen any evidence of that. You know what I'm saying? But that is a cost, and also the cost of a CPA. So some of these costs that the city has been absorbing for the DDA, continue to do it. I support the DDA. I'm not about cutting those services off. What I am about is having an intelligent civil discussion about planning maybe 6 to 8 years down the line. People need to understand that DDA needs to become self-supporting, and self-supporting means your vendors and your services that you're getting from your economic development director, your attorney, and your CPA.
Right.
That's
If I may, to follow up on that, I agree totally. I think that probably it's 50-50 how many of the 20-some DDAs in Oakland County have their municipal attorneys. I think the smaller budgeted DDAs utilize the municipal attorneys. Those that have larger budgets, which is 95% of them that ours, often bring in a special attorney, or in fact have their own attorney, the DDAs. But again, when I worked for a city manager in Rochester, just short of 8 years as the DDA director in Rochester, with an outstanding city manager with credentials like Paul, who basically, I liked what he said. He said, well, if the law says the DDA should manage it, then they should pay for it as soon as they can. And they should absolve the city of as much fiscal responsibility as the DDA will allow. So that's, again, the goal.
Perfect. Next, I'm going to the millage and assessed valuation comparison. And on that particular sheet, we're showing that we do have an increase in our mill. The general increase overall looks like it's 0.26 general increase. We do state where what that increase is going to be used for, at least in the millage and assessed valuation comparison. My question is does this page of the budget meet the tax increase disclosure requirement of the Uniform Budgeting Act? That's the question. I mean, I just want to make sure, because the Uniform Budgeting Act does require that the public be notified that there's an increase in tax coming in the budget. And I just want to make sure that we are meeting the statutory requirements, that this is sufficient notice.
I'll need to double check what notice you're looking at, but I did review the Truth in Taxation, which connects to the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act and requires certain obligations be met, but typically you provide that notice. I'll have to double check and see whether that notice is required to contain the specific increase when you're doing it under the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act as opposed to Truth in Taxation.
And that's exactly what the question was. Wanting to make sure the two statutes I spent a lot of time looking on were MCL 141.436, and that's the Uniform Budgeting Act. And then, if you're not complying with the Uniform Budgeting Act, you then go to the, a notice statute, 211.24. So I just wanted to make sure that prior to any vote on this, there's compliance with the Uniform Budgeting Act on that. I thought that the notice was pretty weak. I think if I were a citizen in the city, I would not necessarily know that there was a mill increase occurring, but there is. So I think it's important that the public realize that, yes, it looks like it's 0.26. Then, when I go to the capital improvement section, so if you go to the capital improvement section, first of all, if you look at the millage and assessed valuation comparison, you look at what the capital improvement mill is being proposed for 2021 and 21 through 22. So we're projecting that mill to remain the same after this year. But when you go to the capital improvement section, and if you go down and look at where we are proposing expenditures with that mill, 2021 and 21-22 do not have anything filled in. Here's my issue. It's difficult for me to approve a budget with a proposed mill increase for the next 2 years, but yet not tell the voter where you're going to put that mill, because it's pretty specific. That mill increase is on capital improvement, but when you go to the capital improvement section, you do not see where the city has planned for how they're going to spend that mill. Yes.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the budget that you're approving today is only the budget you'll be approving is only the 2019-20 budget. That was a projected millage revenues if we do in fact keep the millage rate staying the same for capital improvements. But your budget that you would only be approving is a 2019-20 budget. You are not approving the revenues nor the expenditures in future years. I left that number in there because I think council should expect that we are going to be paying for capital improvements based upon all the, what we're looking at as far as the strategic plan for everything that we have to do for the city and looking forward. Looking at the roads, looking for the water and sewer, which are definitely an enterprise fund, looking at the park improvements that we're going to be made. And I think it's fiscally responsible that we show that we should be keeping that millage the same within the future, but waiting to fill those numbers in for the expenditures, because we will have those expenditures because we have not had the proper short-term or long-term planning for those infrastructure improvements.
You hit the nail on the head. We don't have it, and there's a reason why. Because the city has done a lousy job of planning for the future. You hit the nail on the head. But when I go to your motion, it says to approve the 1920 proposed budget and acknowledging the 2021 and 21-22 projected budgets as submitted. So you are asking me to do an approval of what is being projected.
But we're not asking you to approve it. You are just looking at some of the future expenditures.
Okay, I have a problem with that. I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
That's an issue for me, but that's consistent with my overall criticism of the failure of the city to plan and prepare for maintenance of some of our infrastructures. Next, I do want to talk, make a comment on, this is on water and sewer. So if you go to water and sewer, I was a little bit surprised to read the discussion that was at 801-111, vulnerability and assessment. I have to commend you, Paul, because when I spoke with you in the fall, I don't think you had been employed with the city for even 30 days. And you and I were talking about security, and it was about the fence over at the water tower. I don't know if you remember that or not, but you, within 30 days of being on the job, brought up that issue of security. When you read the discussion at 801, I see here that there was a study plan was developed in 2005, and since then the security of the entire pumping and distribution system has been upgraded. I just found that unbelievable that there is some sort of study out there, and frankly I would like to see it. And here we are 20 years later, and we are just now getting a fence around the water tower. Next, if you look at the revenue page for sewer and water, and I'm looking at the Beginning fund balance, which is roughly 8.5 million. You have total revenues coming in at about 3 million. You have total expenditures of about 5.3 million. So what we have here is total expenditures are exceeding total revenues, and I understand why that number is there, because we are playing catch-up with some maintenance issues over in the water department that should have been handled many years ago. And the problem is exactly what Mr. Kennedy, Councilman Kennedy said. If you sit back and wait to do these maintenance issues, the cost increases. So what is the difference here? Well, we're looking at a difference of about $2.2 million. So our beginning fund balance is going to drop now to about 6.2 million because somebody did not plan for the maintenance issues that needed to be done over there in a facility that has the ability to raise revenue. That is the big issue that I have. This could have been prevented. This could have been prevented because the charter, and I want to correct myself, I think I said Article 9, it's Article 12, talks about the ability of the city to increase utilities. So at any time, the city could have gone in and raised whatever they needed to raise in order to make sure that these maintenance issues were being adjusted. And what's happening today? We don't have a plan for how we're going to replenish this. We're depleting our fund by $2.2 million. Was not happy about that. I do want to go to the building authority. On the building authority, it's just a general question. Laura, you might be able to help on that. On the building authority, I see where we are zeroed out in 219 and 220 because it appears that everything's been paid off. So we have a beginning fund balance roughly of $9,501. Does that stay in there, or do we close out the building? I mean, how is this handled?
Most of that is for the,
How is that handled?
most of it was for the land acquisition when we bought Volunteer Park. So there's a little bit of money left in that account. That will go back into the land acquisition fund.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the other one. I think that was the Wells Street parking lot. So there shouldn't be any money in that because that was all came from the DDA.
Okay.
So, well, whatever's in there will go back to the originating fund. It doesn't stay in building authority.
Okay, so the building authority. Does the building authority, is that an entity? Does that get
No, I'm not sure I exactly understand all of it. We've used it when we've done like major projects. The Wall Street parking lot was one of them, and that came out. I guess there is a building authority. There was a commission or a committee of some sort at one time. I don't remember last time they met, but they're the ones that approved the building of this building that were in here. They're also the ones, I believe, that approved the Wall Street parking lot. But how far-reaching their authority is, I really don't know.
Okay, thank you, that answers it. And then to the fire department. The fire department, I was looking at line item 977, and 977 is regarding improving the facility for women, the bathroom improvements, including lockers and changing rooms, and you only have budgeted $2,000 for that. Are you going to be able to make that change with $2,000?
Yes, so the plan, right now I have 2 unisex bathrooms. Since we hit 25% female, I thought it was fair that we refurb their bathroom to make it dedicated female bathroom and then a dedicated male. That included some lockers. There's been complaints that the shower facility is terrible, so I'm going to upgrade. I got to get the ceiling fans to work, they don't work, and I was going to paint. So it was like a minimum cost that I thought it was important to try to get into their room to make it better.
Well, I want to thank you on this. I think what's important is that clearly we're living in a diverse culture, and women are entering into normally, traditionally male sort of jobs. Who knows? We may have some fire women out there that want to go into first responder kind of professions down the line. And I think it's important that they have their own facility and keep that separated. So I'm glad that you're addressing that issue and being sensitive to that. Not every department in the city is moving forward with diversity as much as you are, but I want to commend you for.
The second issue I had to address is with this year's budget, we always buy 3 sets of fire gear. We're going to exclusively buy female gear. They complain about the boots don't fit, the pants are too long, so I'm going to dedicate that money to them for boots that fit, gloves that fit, coats that fit, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
I just had a couple of questions. The IT, do you have a percentage essentially for you suggested that you want to end up getting all the equipment swapped out in the next 3 years. So I'm assuming the first year is going to end up being the bulk with the servers and things financially. Is it taper off, or will the next 2 years end up being pretty much an even split of whatever is remaining?
Actually, it's going to occur over 3 budget years. We will actually start some of those improvements within this year's budget, within the 2018-19 budget. So before July 1st, we have money remaining in specific departments, and we're going to address some of the needs for those specific departments with the dollars that are budgeted for computers and for equipment. We may have to make some adjustments, or we start to look in future years, the third year, but we just believe within 3 budget years that we should be able to make all the necessary changes, make all the necessary repairs, and upgrade the computers that are needed as outlined within the audit for all the departments.
So we won't have any more Windows 95?
Yes, and we'll make sure no more computers have DOS either.
All right. The other thing I was curious about, I like the idea that the DDA can end up being so vital that they're going to have an economic engine to be able to pay for Bob's services here, but I don't want us to end up becoming impatient because they've struggled for an awful long time paying for a parking lot where they haven't actually been able to do much more than conceive of what their visions for things might end up being. I'd like to have them get a crack at actually getting some capital improvement projects going downtown so that they get a sense of, what they're able to accomplish. So I just want to hope that everybody can be patient enough to allow that to take place. That's all I have. Thanks.
Anyone else with anything in regards to the budget this evening? Okay. Paul, we'll move on to the manager's report.
I wanted to update all of you on the couple items that are going on. One, Public Works Director, we're doing background checks on individuals. We had the individual interviews last week, and we'll be conducting those checks and hopefully to have somebody hired on within the next 30 to 60 days. I did already outline or discuss regarding the IT improvements. As you know, the budget also, the next step, it was going to come to our next meeting that will be coming up for adoption. The ordinance officer, we have an interview scheduled this week with one of the candidates for that position, so I'll be updating you as how quickly we fill that position. I want to talk a little bit about Ladies' Night Out. It was a successful event. I don't know if Bob got the chance to even mention that tonight or if it was just overlooked. We had a few hundred people, a few hundred women in downtown last Friday night. Great evening for the event. I'm sure a lot of you were out there, got a chance to see. Several council members were out there. People were excited about what's happening in downtown South Lyon. They're excited about the new cooking school and location that were opened up. The stores were packed with people, several giveaways. I think it was a great event in downtown, and I think we'll continue to draw on the successes of that event and continue to make improvements within upcoming years. I'm sure most of you saw the police presence, which we had down there too, made everybody feel very safe, and it was an excellent night for our downtown. The one item we've been talking about a couple times was bringing the NASA photos into the community. It was kind of almost like the Detroit DIA Inside Out, but this has to do with NASA and a program that they had a few years ago where they actually circulated photos of the solar system and different photos from the Hubble telescope. And we're going to be bringing those to the community in the months of June, July, and August. This is a partnership with the Cultural Arts Commission as well as the Salem Lyon Library. We're going to be looking to put those up probably the first week of June. We'll have a walking tour map so people can see those all around town. That coupled with a couple other things that we're going to be having in town, some other interesting art photos, I think is going to make downtown and the community of South Lyon a destination point for people wanting to see some activity in the community. One of the items that I mentioned here also had to do with Michigan Seamless Tube, outlined with some prior letters. Seamless Tube and the DEQ talked to us regarding a model ordinance prohibiting the use of groundwater, restricting that within certain areas of the community. So we will probably be scheduling a meeting for DEQ, and Seamless Tube will be coming before City Council. So I wanted to prepare council members for that. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, go ahead.
I just had a question. Who's doing the background for the new employees coming in? Criminal background?
We are sending that out to a particular company. We have a company that we deal with.
Okay, just want to make sure it was with a third party. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Anyone else with anything for Paul tonight? Thanks, Paul. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Please state your name and address.
I'm Brody Carpenter, and then address like my home address,
Yes.
1131 Shetland Drive. And then I have a couple questions. First off, is a copy of the budget going to be available, like so I can see it and read it, or is that not?
Yes, it is. We have, Mr. Mayor, we have one available at the counter, and obviously, if it's approval, I believe we also provided one to the library, but we do have it available online as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then I'm permitted to talk about past motions, correct?
Certainly, but we don't normally have a back and forth. So if there's any questions in regards to that, you would have to wait for our council comments at the end.
Okay. But I could, okay. So then I just wanted to talk about the resolution to waive the penalties for non-filing property tax affidavits under the MCL 211.27B. And I just wanted to talk about how I understand that Councilmember Walton said that it was a little unfair because they did not know about the filing date and that it was wrong to punish them. But I feel like that's a little bit wrong because not punishing them not only hurts the government because they're not paying their taxes, but they just like won't learn. And I feel like if you're going to invest in real estate and own real estate, that you should be keeping up with stuff like that. I feel like that's a fundamental thing in real estate. And then also I just wanted to talk about how relating it to as if you had a dog and your dog went to the bathroom in your house, you don't pet it and say that it's fine. You move the dog outside and you clean it up and remove the smell so it doesn't happen again. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. I'll be quick anyway.
Okay.
Way under 3.
Okay.
It's abnormal for me, I know.
You're right. Go ahead.
Ryan Cottingen, which is at Brewing Company, 601 South Lafayette. I just wanted to thank council for the interest in doing this business survey. I think it's a great thing. I think a lot of good can come from it. So I just real briefly wanted to say thank you guys for exploring it. If you need a guinea pig and you're worried about offending business owners, I will gladly look it over. And I know you mentioned spending money on it. Google Forms is free, easy. And also, you know, I'm not in the DDA, and so I think a lot of focus on business in this town gets put on the DDA, and it's great that hopefully this reaches out to a bunch of other business owners in town that's not specifically in the DDA. And I love the ideas about the DDA being self-sufficient, and I would love to be a DDA member and pay in if, you know, just expand that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, at this time, we will close public comment and move on to our council comments this evening. Councilmember Kennedy, how do you feel about starting us off?
I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. So just want to talk about a few things tonight. I'll start with tonight I'd like to recognize the Cultural Arts Commission and their Arts and Education Show ceremony that took place last Friday. The event showcases various forms of art created by the students from both South Lyon High School and South Lyon East High School. It's on display out there in the vestibule. If you haven't seen it, you should make a point to come in and see just how creative some of the students are. I mean, It's very impressive, very impressive. As the city manager also mentioned, last Friday we had Ladies' Night Out. Downtown and the streets, shops, and restaurants were filled. The weather cooperated, and every business owner I spoke with said they were delighted with the number of customers that came through their doors. Just one more great event for the city. And speaking of great events for the city, I want to remind everyone that the Lake Street Cruise-In kicks off the 2019 season next Wednesday evening, May 22nd at 6 p.m. It's always a great time to come downtown and see the fabulous cars, listen to some great music, and get some great food. So please make plans to attend the Cruise-In next week and every fourth Wednesday now through September. Also, I had the opportunity to attend a groundbreaking ceremony last week for the Parkside Apartments. The new apartment building's located near the entrance to McCaddy Park, and I want to welcome Tom Palache and his son Aaron and wish them the very best on their new endeavor. Just as a note, Tom is not totally new to our area, as he originally established the Lyon Grill, located at Pontiac Trail and 8 Mile Road in Lyon Township. So thanks again to Tom and Aaron and for making the investment in our community. It's a great-looking apartment building and will be a welcome addition to our city. Also this week is Law Enforcement Week. So I'd like to just remind the residents to remember and thank the brave men and women of the South Lyon Police Department for all that they do to protect our city and its residents. They often do not receive the recognition and gratitude that they truly deserve. The same goes for all law enforcement officers everywhere. And finally, I just want to remind everyone once again that the fire department still has free smoke detectors available for city residents. Just contact them at 248-437-2616, and a firefighter will deliver, install, and test the unit for you at absolutely no charge. So give them a call and keep you and your family safe. That's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Richards, are you ready to go?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to bring up something that we talked about quite a bit last week, or last council meeting, but it just made it to the newspapers. This is a copy of the Current, okay, which is published in Livingston County, Green Oak Township, and so on. And here's our picture on the second part of that's our crew of supposedly 70 people. Anyway, that's us right there, and we made the page, the front page of this Current newspaper. Anyway, I thought you'd like to know that, okay? It's worth mentioning. Last May 5th, Sunday before just last, we had the cleanup at the Witch's Hat Museum, okay? And we had 25 volunteers about come out, and we did yard work, painting on the facilities, and we had our society members pretty well turn out, okay, and a large amount of volunteers from the Methodist Church. And we were wondering if we were going to really make the deadline on this and get it, but everything worked out okay, and we got a lot done. And we all felt pretty good about it, more than we've done other years. Next item, I want to bring you an update on Providence Hospital, or Providence Clinic in South Lyon, up there across from the hotel. Okay, they're in an extensive remodeling on the inside of the building, and having been in there and seen it many times, I thought I should mention it. They're in the fourth stage of their remodeling and reinvesting, as you might call it, in our downtown, okay, in this location. And it's supposed to be for the next 20 years. And the target amount is just under $500,000 for this interior work that they're doing at this time. And I mean, they've moved walls and tile ceiling, apertures within the walls. It's quite impressive for all medical personnel stuff. This is the new Ascension Providence, as taken over from the St. John's Providence from about 4 or 5 years ago, okay? Gradually it's a different corporate structure. It's in New Jersey, I believe. Okay, last item I just want to mention to people that we still need more people and volunteers for the Cemetery Commission, and things are looking up. I think we're going to have a good turnout. and there's interest in the cemetery, and we've certainly have an increase in the revenue from selling of lots and foundations and such this year in the report. Anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Parisian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. First, a thank you to the Cultural Arts Commission. They always put on such a fabulous show, and having the high school students and seeing their artwork, it's always incredibly impressive. And we have some serious talent in South Lyon. So if your work is out there, well done, very impressive. Don't forget the farmers market every Saturday, this spring, this summer. So go out and support our local businesses or surrounding area businesses as well that come to the farmers market and set up shop. And then lastly, I don't remember your name because I can't remember anything anymore, but thank you for coming up to the podium and saying your piece, because I think being inquisitive is important, especially for as young as you guys are. It's important to get involved in your local government and even bigger scale. But to answer your question, I would say the way that our perspective on council, I can't really speak for everyone because I'm just one of 7, but one of the questions that was asked to the individual that was up here presenting was, what are other communities doing? And if we are aligned with other communities and they're not charging for this this tax, not filing the property affidavit tax, then we probably shouldn't charge either. Not that we should mimic what other communities do, but we don't want to be an outlier either. So we don't necessarily want to punish someone if they didn't understand, and if they continue to do this and misuse the system, then that would be an issue. But if it's a mistake, we don't want to be too harsh, but we also don't want to be the outlier that charges them every time. So I appreciate your inquisitiveness, and I think it's really impressive. So good for you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Parisian. Councilmember Walton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few things tonight. Also, thank you. I don't take anything personally. I appreciate your feedback and your comments, so thank you for that. Mr. Zelnick, I did get asked by several residents on Gibson Street when they are going to get curbs. Apparently, they were overlooked. They call themselves the Forgotten Street. And they have several sewer grates that are falling in and several sinkholes along the roadways that they want addressed. So if we could add that to our list of concerns. Maybe someone can take a drive down that little dead-end street, but it's right down the, right over there, just off 10 Mile and Hagedorn. The other thing I have was Happy Law Enforcement Week. We have lots of great officers in our community, and I really appreciate your presence here. And the last thing I have is a young man named Joseph Byer who is working on his Eagle Scout project. He left a flyer, and he's looking for returnable bottles or bottle slip returns or cash donations to help him with his project. What he's going to be doing is working at the South Lyon Historical Society, one of the sheds at the depot. He's going to clean out the shed, paint the inside, put up new shelving, and replace some outer boards and paint the outside. So it looks like he's got a lot to do, and if anybody wants to make donations, I can get you the information, the contact information for him. But the depot has done a great job, and it looks wonderful. I saw all their new plants, and I do want to commend them on how much work they're doing. And I hope that Mr. Byer is able to collect the money that he needs to help him with his Eagle Scout project. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walton. Councilmember Kivel?
I just wanted to say that I'm speaking about the budget and seeing the direction that we're actually taking. We're really making some very strong forward progress, and I'm really heartened by that. So I think that this is just it sort of forecasts the good things that we're coming up to. So I just want us to stay on track. The idea of trying to recognize past failings seems counterproductive. So I just hope that everybody understands that we're really changing the direction of this community. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kivel. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I do want to talk very briefly about the budget. The budget did not address how we are going to pay down our unfunded pension liability. Been reading a lot of articles about that. And I will continue to criticize the failure of the city in the past to accept prudent measures and appropriate measures of planning for the future of the city. I think there's a lot of learning that can be learned by past mistakes, and to ignore them, I think, completely ignores the problem. You need to understand what the problem is before you can solve it. And you need to understand the city has not been good at planning, and that you need to move forward and be critical about that process and improve upon it every year. Next to the gentleman that spoke from Shetland, I believe, Shetland Drive, I do want to say, as I sat back and listened to your comment, I want to commend you, because you are addressing an issue that we see in our federal government in Washington, D.C., and that's accountability. That's what you're talking about. And I have to commend you for being extremely perceptive and understanding that it doesn't matter whether it's a tiny little local issue or a big issue on the national scene. Being held accountable for what you do, what you say, how you conduct yourself, whether or not you tell the truth or you don't tell the truth, it's accountability. And that's the issue that I think that you bring to all of us, and understanding that even someone of maybe your years, in terms of not necessarily having all the experience in government, you're able to understand that there's rules out there and people should play by those rules and be held accountable when they're not playing by the rules. Because if they're not being held accountable, why have rules? So I want to commend you. I think it was a brilliant, brilliant comment to make. And I looked at the big picture. So accountability is definitely a very serious issue. Next, I just want to remind people that it's time to work out in the yard. Everybody knows I'm a master gardener. Not that that means anything, except that I've taken all my tools over to Peter's True Value. They've been sharpened. I picked up my last trimmer tonight. And just wanted to say that Peter's True Value does a great job at sharpening garden tools, and they do it at an extremely, extremely reasonable price. Next, let's get ready for our own Lake Street Cruisin', starting Wednesday, May 22nd. Many of us were chatting and talking about the crowds that Lake Street Cruisin' brings into the city of South Lyon, and when the people come in, I think it's important to realize they go into one of our great restaurants or whatever. So tonight, I told the leaders of it, Doug Cook, that I am going to spend every meeting and mention a couple of sponsors each night so we can give them a great thank you for what they are doing to help promote the city of South Lyon. I'm starting with this great T-shirt. It was designed by, I believe, Roger Colosimo at Quicksilver. Roger's just a brilliant graphic designer. He's got his office right across from Peter's True Value. So thank you so much, Roger, for a great T-shirt. And let's get ready to rev those motors. I do want to thank A&E Diamond Jewelers downtown South Lyon. If I have a diamond and if I want to get it fixed or repaired, there's only one jeweler in town I trust. That's A&E Diamond Jewelers. I want to thank Advanced Capital Management out of Southfield. Do you believe that? Somebody out of Southfield is coming into South Lyon and sponsoring one of our events. We have Automotive Supply Company out of Livonia. Isn't that wonderful? Somebody from Livonia. Wayne County is coming here and saying, we have an event in this town that is worth us coming and spending some money on a sponsorship. Bell's Landscape Service. It's spring, you can't go through town without seeing one of the Bell landscaping trucks going through town. Bullet Distributors, well, we all know that they deal with automotive supplies and accessories, and that's part of the Gary Fagan brand, Bullet Distributors. So those are our groups tonight that I would like to definitely thank and recognize some of our sponsors that are going to be with us for the rest of the summer. Next, I would like to welcome Fraser Bicycle to the South Lyon area. They are located over in Green Oak. And what makes Fraser so special is that on this Thursday, May 16th, they are going to have an author by the name of Mike Riley there signing books. And Dan, you might appreciate this. He is a sports announcer. I don't know if the name rings a bell, but he's going to be there. He is the announcer for the Ironman triathlons. He's written a book on endurance in life, endurance in what you do. So he's going to be there to answer questions, I think starting at 6:30, and then the book signing is afterwards. Every time I go to Fraser Bicycle over in Green Oak, I run into so many people from South Lyon. Unbelievable. Great ownership, great staff over there. So I hope to be over there Thursday night and just get a glimpse at this incredible sports announcer. Next, I'd just like to let everybody know that Jan's Skin Spa has moved, and she now is right across of 161 Whipple Street. She used to be right downtown on Pontiac Trail. She has now moved to the back across from the hotel. She's just about ready to open. Please welcome Jan in her new space, and I think that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I just got a couple things locally here, a couple great golf outings for great causes. Blessings in a Backpack, Saturday, June 1st at Tanglewood Golf Club. If you don't know about Blessings in a Backpack, 100% of the volunteer-run organization provides weekend food to students in the South Lyon School District, currently serving over 280 students in all 12 buildings. This is a great thing to have in the community to help some of our lower-income families. And then also we have the Chamber of Commerce golf outing. That will be at Kensington Metro Park on June 19th. Both of these are great, good amount of people who should be at both. It'll be a good time. Hopefully the weather will be nice. We did luck out on the weather on Friday for the ladies' night out and our that's exactly how I sounded Friday night when they asked me to speak too, so it wasn't a mistake. Excuse me. Sorry to our friends at the Cultural Arts Commission and our students and teachers who continue to set the bar high and then surpass it each and every year with their exhibit out here. So if you didn't get a chance to take that in, please do. It was a great time on Friday night. Thank you, Chief, and your staff for being everywhere all over downtown, making sure we're all safe. You guys have a great week this week. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I got a couple of things if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. Sorry,
just to tag on with the Blessings in the Backpack, Witch's Hat Brewery is partnering with Blessings in the Backpack this Sunday, the 19th, at the during the South Lyon Cycle anniversary from 12 to 4. It's this Sunday. And also the Longevity Run is occurring this Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. So just a reminder of those events that are occurring.
Thank you, Chief. And for future reference, obviously, you let me know if you got something like that. I'll
Okay.
make sure that we...
I didn't know if any of the events were going to be mentioned during council comments, so I wanted to sneak them in there.
Yep. No, thank you, Chief. So now we'll look for a motion to adjourn this evening.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Anybody need anything?